against any kind of trouble, any kind of work. But the simple act of kindness from a complete stranger will enstitch you. Now, this is a quote from a woman named Daphne Bonnie, who is the mother of one of my favorite writers. It's also a lesson that my mother taught me every day when I was a child. See, my mother works in downtown Cincinnati, and every morning we would take the highway to the city. She always had snacks in her glove box, but they weren't for me. They were for the homeless individuals that were at the end of the offerings and on the corner of the streetlights. I'll never forget the intimate conversations, the thank yous, and the smiles we shared before the light turned green. Every moment felt like a gift, and I wanted them to continue when I went to college. Now, I'm the kind of guy who can't plan well enough in the future to even pack lunch, so it was pretty unlikely that I was going to have snacks for someone that I may or may not run into. So I tried using my words instead, and it led to some pretty amazing things. Every interaction I had broadened my capacity and my perspective. In the words of Mr. Rogers, you can't help but love someone once you know their story. I tried to emulate these words in every conversation that I had. One of the most memorable of these was one I had actually here on campus. I was walking home one night, and it was late. I was approached by a man who asked me if I had any money for some food. Unfortunately, I didn't have any cash on me, so I did have a debit card though. So I thought back to the example my mother had said, so I introduced myself. The man told me his name was Anthony, so I said, let's go get some food. We went to Doghouse because it was late and it was the only place open. He got a hot dog and a drink, and so we sat down and started talking. He told me he suffered from schizophrenia. It was a pretty bad disease, and as he continued to explain what his daily experience was like, I became more and more amazed that he was able to take care of himself. But the most amazing part of this moment was realizing that just 20 minutes ago, this man sitting in front of me was just a man with tattered sneakers, worn jeans, brown felt jacket full of holes, and an unknown name. This man's outfit told 1,000 stories that I would never hear. But after an hour talking outside the 7-Eleven, I was able to hear about his family, his dreams, and his sorrows. See, Anthony was plagued by the dissonance and incontinence. He struggled with his drug addiction. He was never treated for his schizophrenia, so he turned to self-medication. It was a life of struggle, and amidst the demons inside his head, he still found laughter. At the end of the day, he said to me, if I could be anything in the world, I would be a comedian. I want to bring laughter to this sad, sad world. Now, I don't know about you, but I was dumbfounded that this man that I'd only just met was telling me some of the intimate details about himself. I couldn't understand why until a few months later when I saw him walking down Wisconsin. I started talking to him, and he told me that his schizophrenia was getting worse. I looked down, and I noticed that his ankles were clearly mangled. I asked him what had happened. He told me that his schizophrenia was getting to be so bad that he had tried jumping off a bridge just a week ago. I mean, I was at a loss of words. What do you say to that when someone says something like that to you? Well, you talk to them like they're a normal person. You continue to have a conversation like you would just moments before they gave you this information. So I thought back to just moments before when I tapped him on the shoulder and said hello. I asked him how his mother and his little brother were doing. He simply smiled and said, "You remember." That's when it hit me. To Anthony, simply introducing myself and asking, "How are you?" unraveled parts of his life that many people had probably never heard. Now make no mistake, Anthony sharing his story with me was a gift that he did not know me, but I was lucky he did. A few months later, I found myself in a similar situation. I was studying abroad in Dublin. I was flying back from Croatia, and I had a window seat. There were two men sitting next to me, and they were both very large, probably about 6'5". It would have been a lot more intimidating had they not been sitting in the clown car that we call the economy section. Now, 15 minutes after we reached cruising altitude, I began to look out the window at the mountain range below us. The man next to me kind of nudged me and just said, "What country do you think we're flying over?" I had no idea, so I just guessed France. We discussed it for a minute or two before I introduced myself. He told me his name was Sid. Now, Sid had a pretty incredible story. He started to talk to me, so I asked him where he was from and where he was going. The conversation just took off from there. The more he said, the more I asked, and the 3-hour plane ride got a lot shorter. So Sid had actually lived and worked in over 10 countries, living in each one for no more than 6 months at a time, for various reasons. Before I was born, he fought the Croatian War of Independence. It was a gruesome and bloody war, and he told me about how his friends had succumbed to some of the emotional perversions that war can often induce. He expressed how hard it was to sit by and watch, as there was nothing he could do. Now, luckily for Sid, he found his wife Nicola after the fighting ended. You could tell that he really loved her, because when he talked about her, he had this big smile on his face, and his sky was glowing. So Nicola originally lived and worked in Amsterdam before moving to Ireland. And all this time, Sid was living and working in Croatia. Unfortunately, 6 years ago, while Sid was flying over to Ireland, she passed away from heart complications. Now, that day that we were on the plane, for me, it could have been just another ordinary day and not talk to Sid. However, after our conversation, I found out that that day, April 4th, 2016, was Nicola's 46th birthday. That day, he was flying over to start a new life in Ireland, to be closer to her memory. Now, it's crazy. All of this from just a simple question on a plane. Our conversation could have easily just died out moments after it started, and I would have never heard the crazy twists and turns Sid's life had taken. I know a lot of people have found themselves in similar situations, and it can often be difficult to continue these conversations. So I have a few simple tips for you. The first being to just introduce yourself and shake the other person's hand. Now, shaking their hand is key. The second is just asking a benign question that still shows you're investing in the other person. A couple examples are, where are you from? Or, if you could go anywhere in the world, where would you go? Third, that I always try to maintain, is eye contact. And it may sound simple, but when you're engaging with a stranger, it can be hard sometimes. So all three of these things will help show the person that you care and are invested in them. It will also entice them to open up about themselves. Luckily for me, Sid opened up, and our story didn't end there. About a year later, my parents and I went back to Ireland. And while we were there, we went down to Cork, where we visited Sid, as he now lives and works as a permanent resident. So, you're probably wondering what the point of talking to strangers is, and maybe even why you should do it. I get it. You're probably thinking, there's no way that every conversation I have will result in the birth of a new friendship, or the unraveling of an incredible story. And honestly, you're right. A lot of times when you go up and talk to strangers, they may not be very receptive to it. And they can be for various reasons, like maybe they're busy, or they're uncomfortable, or they're just not in the mood to talk. And to bring this close to home, think about a time where you've ever been approached by someone you didn't know, and you brushed them off. It's probably for one of the reasons that I just listed. And that's okay. The important thing is to understand it so that we don't get discouraged. Because if we get discouraged, then the conversations like the ones with Anthony and Sid may never happen. Now, along with not getting discouraged, we need to understand our motivation for why we should engage in these kinds of conversations. See, my motivation has always come from the words of my high school attendance ladies. So, these women, just to preface this, were the nicest faculty member in our whole school. And I didn't really understand why, because they dealt with some of the most delinquent kids who were always coming in late. So one day in my junior year, I went up and asked them, why is it that you guys are always so nice to us when we're always coming in late? And they said to me, you never know what someone is coming from before they saw you. That really stuck with me. I began to understand that simply asking someone, how are you, could be the best part of their day. Just talking to someone grants them the knowledge that they matter. Because as humans, sharing our voice and experiencing the satisfaction of knowing that we are heard is what it's all about. Now, in our generation, we are great at sharing our voices. We do even social media all the time. We don't always give others the satisfaction of being heard. So, before I go, I have one last quote for you by a man named Chris Abani. The world is never saved in grand mezzanine gestures, but the simple accumulation of soft, gentle, almost invisible acts of compassion. You and I have the opportunity to carry out these acts every day by simply engaging with those around us. All of these moments and these conversations are just a few breaths away, but it's up to you to pursue them. You never know the weight your words can carry, the days you may change, and the relationships you may develop.